What's going on, guys? Ben here, Enos Tech, and today we're taking a look at Thermaltake's level 20 MT ARGB case. Now, as you will see here, there are three ARGB fans front and center behind a bit of tempered glass on the front panel. Now, on each side of the tempered glass is a bit of a slot there. I can almost fit my fingers in it, as you'll see, and that's going to allow the ARGB fans enough room to pull in some airflow from the front of the case to help keep all your internal components cool. Also, obviously, the ARGB fans are fully controllable. There's an RGB button up here. Moving around to the side of the case quickly, you'll notice there's another bit of tempered glass. Now, one thing I like here is instead of having the 4 thumb screws in each corner, Thermaltake have opted to put the thumb screws in the back and make this an actual panel per se, instead of just a piece of glass that is stuck to the side of the case. I'm a fan of this. I was never really a big fan of having the 4 screws on the glass itself. I don't know why. It's just not something that really appealed to me personally. Keeping things going to around the back here. Nothing too much going on here. I did notice that we have a single exhaust fan that doesn't have a lot of options. Unfortunately, this exhaust fan is limited to the 120 mil in size due to the mounting, unless of course you want to mod it, but then there's still not really enough room to put a bigger fan there. It's a bit of a shame because with the mounting they've also gone for the standard single holes, where they could have gone for the slide mounting, which would have allowed you to push the fan up or down just a little bit depending on the hardware you're installing. Sometimes this can be of great benefit. Say sometimes something might be hitting your fan. Well, if you can knock it down a bit to maybe your AIO hose is up top there, so you just want to drop the fan down just enough to sneak that hose over the top of it. It's a really great feature, and it's a shame that Thermaltake has not included it with their level 20 MT. But hey ho, we won't hold it against them too much, but it is something worth mentioning. Now, we've got 7 standard PCI expansion bays here. Plenty enough for dual graphics card setup, sound cards, capture cards, whatever have you, extra USB ports, data drives, whatever you want to stick back here. Should be more than enough room for a normal system. As always, got a bottom mounted power supply and our motherboard cut out here. Now, another thing I was quite happy to see about this case is the secondary side panel. Too many times this doesn't get any love at all, and I've probably got a good few cases from different manufacturers where I could just swap out the side panel and you would never even know. It looks like they're just generic, and one company probably makes them and sends them to everybody. But Thermaltake have opted to add a bit of ventilation here, which is nice. It's going to allow the fans in the front behind the tempered glass to pull in a bit of extra air from somewhere, or get a bit of extra airflow going through to help keep your components cool. Now, obviously, cooling is a big issue with PC gamers and PC users in general, because you put all these electronics, all these parts inside a tin aluminum box, and then you turn them on, and especially when you start playing graphically demanding games and stuff, things do get warm in there. So having a good bit of airflow and cooling is what's needed. Now, onto the top here, we've got our front I/O panel, and I know it's probably a bit hard to see, but I'll walk you through it anyways. Over on the left here, we have the RGB button. This is going to allow you to control the ARGB fans. No software, no anything. You simply just hit this button and it will cycle through some of the pre-made settings. You won't get full control of them, but you'll get decent control for just a button. Next up, we have our headphone and mic inputs, followed by 2 USB 3.1 ports. We've obviously got our small reset button, and then our nice power button over here on the side. All in all, it's looking like Thermaltake has done a good job with their level 20 MT, at least from what I can see on the outside. So with that being said, why don't we rip some of these panels off and have a look at the inside. Alright, so before we put our build in this, let's take a quick little look at the inside. As you'll notice, there's a nice little cutout here to show off your power supply. Whether you have a standard power supply or an RGB power supply, hopefully, if all goes to plan, the logo should pop up right here so you can kind of show it off and let the world know what's powering your system. Moving our way up, on top of this PSU shroud here, there's a nice bit of ventilation here, which I know you obviously can't see it here, but it spans the whole length of the power supply cover, and it's just going to help to keep that airflow going. It's going to help make sure that the air can move freely through the case as it needs to. It's going to make sure the power supply and the cables down there don't get too hot for any reason. Not that they should, but you know, just in case. Yeah, working our way up, we'll see there's plenty of cutouts to pass cable throughs. Now, one thing that I'm not a fan of again here is the fact that there's no ROM grommets already pre-installed. I'm a big fan of those, especially the ones where they kind of close things off so you can't see the hole. To me, it just helps make the build look a bit cleaner. I can't really hold it against Thermaltake for not including them, I don't think, because it's more of a personal aspect for me that I personally like them, even though sometimes they are quite a pain when you're trying to pass like a 24-pin motherboard cable through and it just keeps falling out. But I do prefer them, and I would have liked to see them, especially in a case that's starting to hit the near 100 pound. I think at the time of review, this case is about 85 pounds from Scan UK, which is roughly around $100 in the American market. So for that type of money and what this case has to offer, some of the other features, I would like to see some rubber grommets, and personally I'd pay an extra few quid for them. But hey ho, nonetheless, they're not there. There's a nice big hole here for CPU cooler installation and changing. Now, this comes in handy for reviewers like myself, or anybody who changes their cooler a lot. But if you want to change your cooler, this allows you to not have to take the whole motherboard out. You can do it with everything in the case and probably just take your RAM out real quick and then just swap your coolers out. Whether it be an air cooler or a water cooler or whatever you're using on there, you should be able to swap it out without having to take the motherboard out. Not always the easiest thing in the world to get done, but it is possible. Here, that's a nice bit of, that's where the ventilation on the back side panel goes, is through there, so it's going to help pull in some air. We've got some mounting areas there as well. Mount a couple fans or maybe a couple SSDs or whatever have you. So that's cool options as well. Speaking of SSDs, there is an Ssd mounting bay right down here towards the front of the chassis on the top of the power supply cover. Now, as you can see easily, one thumb screw and it comes out like such. So that's great. Just put your SSD on there, slap it back in, and then you've got easy access to your SSD on the top side. As with the cutouts here to pass through cables, there are a few more in the power supply shroud there, so you can pass cables up to your SSD or to these areas of the motherboard without having to drag them across everything, which is nice. As you can imagine, in the top here is a bit more cooling support. Now, according to Thermaltake's website, you can fit two 120mm fans up there or a single 140mm fan. It doesn't list any radiator capabilities, compatibilities, but if you can fit two 120mm fans up there, odds are you can fit a 240mm AIO rad or some sort of rad there. It's actually quite funny to see that Thermaltake, their website list for radiators, you can fit a 360 in the front, a 120 in the back, and then a 240 down the side here. But all that space up the top, it doesn't really list anything. And I'm guessing that some of that's going to have to be due with compatibility with motherboard heat sinks and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what type of room we have once we get a build inside here. But that's pretty much it for the front side. So looking over at the back, we've got another SSD mounting tray here. same exact type of tray as the one we saw on the front side. Again, just undo the thumb screw, take it out, screw your SSD on, slot it back in there, and tighten that bad boy up. Over here we've got the fan controller, which is a bit of a shame that it only includes controls for the front 3 fans. Now, while you can go ahead and use it to power the rear exhaust fan, obviously the rear exhaust in this case doesn't come with any addressable RGB features. Now, I know some people are going to be wondering, well, why does it only support the 3 fans? This is going to be due to Thermaltake's ecosystem. A lot of their fans come with their own controllers, so there's no need to have this controller power any more than it needs to, because if you're going to have radiators in here, if you're going to go for some of the other Thermaltake fans, like I said, they have their own controllers that their fans will plug into that can normally hold up to 5 fans or something, which can be linked together and stuff. So through that, you'll be able to hook up more fans and even LED lights or anything that you need to keep your RGB build going. We'll also see down here there are a few hiding out the way. 1, 2, 3.5-inch hard drives. Now, while everybody is SSD crazy, and I don't blame them because they are fast, especially your 2.5s are great game drives. You get a 500 gig one, slap some games on it, and you're good to go. 3.5 drives are still very important at this time because the price to storage ratio is still better than that of a SSD, even though the prices of memory and SSDs are currently coming down. Again, you can't buy a 10 terabyte SSD, or if you can, you're going to be spending out the wazoo for it. So it's nice to see a small little cage here for a couple 3.5-inch hard drives tucked out the way. The bag you saw me pull out of there has some of the accessories for the case in it. As you'll see, we have a fan extender cable. We've got a speaker, some screws, TT sticker, and some zip ties in there. And then we've got another cable to do with the LED out and all that type of stuff. So this is it for the inside and outside of the case. What I'm going to do now, we're going to go ahead, we're going to put a build in this, and then we're going to come back and take a look at it once it's all fully built and fully lit up. Alright, so here we go, guys. After a nice t-shirt change, we've completed our build in the level 20MT ARGB from our friends at Thermaltake. And as you can see, those 3 fans in the front are looking absolutely gorgeous. Now, just quickly before we take a look at the inside of the case in the room left after a build, let's just cycle through some of the RGB features that these 3 fans have to offer. Now, if you remember on the front, we saw the RGB button up at the top here. And you just simply press that, and we get a whole host of new RGB settings. There's 27 different illumination modes, they say, even though mode 27 is actually the lights off. So technically, there's 26 illumination modes. But hey ho, what are you gonna do? And as you can see, there are quite a few good ones. Obviously, they've got the standard breathing. There's a wave mode, a flow mode, and all kinds of stuff. There should be enough for you to go ahead and find the mode that is best for you. Personally, I normally leave mine on a nice blue when I'm just using the computer as normal, or depending on what time of year it is. Say Christmas, I might have a green and red lights going on, and that is what I like about the RGB. Now, I know not everybody's a fan of it, but personally I am, because you can change the colors depending on your moods. So say you want to have a Thanksgiving party, oh boom, let's throw on some yellow or orange lights. Like I said, Christmas, green and red. Like, it just allows you to have a bit more fun. And obviously, if you have people over, you can help make your computer a talking piece, which is always a good way to get conversations started. Now, as you will see on the inside, there's quite a bit of room here. There's a good few inches under our single graphics card here, which we could technically fit another GPU in there if we had one to put in. the cutout for the RGB window, as you can see. I think this is more modder friendly than anything now that I've actually built in it, because you've got the PSU in here, but it's set back a bit. Now, some may think what to do with it. I think a nice frosted piece of perspex in here, maybe a couple RGB LEDs behind it to light it up. It could help set things off to tie in with the fans on the front there. You never know, it's just an idea. As for the CPU cooler height, there's not a lot of room for an air cooler height-wise in this case. If you bear with me, I believe, yeah, there's 170 millimeters of height clearance, so you're not going to be able to fit too massive of an air cooler in here, though as you can see, you still can fit a decent air cooler with a 120 millimeter cooling fan on it. For the rest of it, as you see, if you wanted to mount a radiator there, there's plenty of room still there for one. Obviously, if you do mount a radiator there, the length of your graphics card may not be able to be quite as long as you would hope, because it will take up some of the room. And other than that, everything was a breeze. Building in this case was as easy as you would hope for. Like I said, there's plenty of room for SSDs and hard drives. As you can tell, I've not got any of mine up front. They're all tucked in the back. They're all tucked away, out of the way how I like them. But overall, it was an enjoyable experience building in this case, and this case really does look quite beautiful, especially when you turn the lights down, as we'll do in a minute, and just enjoy the RGB that it has to offer. Many thanks to our friends at Thermaltake for sending in their level 20 MT ARGB case. Again, I absolutely loved it. It's going to get our must-have award. Currently coming in around £85 here in the UK from places like Scan. It's definitely worth its money. So that's it for now. As always, please make sure to check back and stay tuned in the future for more reviews and videos.